Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin, NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, today, super pumped. First day of the playoffs. Really excited. Um, and in today's stream, we're going over the two Eastern Conference games that happened tonight, and then tomorrow we'll do the two series that start tomorrow. And then we'll be done all the previews and predictions and such. So, so basically the plan is to, well, the same as the previous streams where we kind of go over some relevant data points or data points that I think are most relevant. And then give predictions, go over odds, and basically that's about it. So let's get to it. I do need one more thing. Actually, that's fine. All right, so for today, we're covering Bruins versus Panthers and Hurricanes versus Islanders. So first, I guess I should just, if you haven't seen already, in the description, there's the schedule for the first four games for each series. Of course, you can look elsewhere to find the schedule, but it's in the description there. And besides that, as I've done previously just before I begin, there's a couple data points that a lot of people reference when it comes to predictions and analyzing series. At the start of the sentence I just did, but anyways, there's a couple data points that people rely on that are not useful, and so I did double check actually. I forget which day, but about the correlation between season series results and playoff matchup results, and the correlation was basically zero. I don't have the exact number offhand, but it's basically zero. So if people talk about the season series, which most reporters, analysts, and such do, it's an irrelevant data point. Now, I mean, you can kind of consider it in a general concept sort of way, but you can't rely on the data because there's no correlation, or at least from the quantity of data that I looked at. So there's that. The other one was, now I'm gapping out on it. Season series and last 10 games. So whatever the streak is going into the season or into the playoffs, it's also irrelevant. That one I didn't double check what the correlation was, but I think it's either small or essentially zero, something like that. In any case, the 10 games before the playoffs, so whatever streak they're on, it's kind of irrelevant as well. So two data points that a lot of previews cover, and if people cover them, they just haven't done their research and don't realize that not all that useful of information. Again, you can take it with a grain of salt, but if the correlation is basically zero, then it essentially tells you nothing. So anyways, so just a couple data points that I would argue you should disregard, but that's just me. So there's those. Now, the ones that I consider most relevant, primarily because I use them for my algorithm, and I've been successful in the past 4 years. Not necessarily predicting the exact winner of the Stanley Cup, but using the data in a way that helps me win money every season. So it's been successful, and I know that it's relevant. The exact percentage of other factors or luck versus the data points I use, I don't know what that percentage would be, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably 50% of what I use, and then 50% other stuff. So data points that I consider most relevant are goal differential primarily. That's the biggest, most important one. Likewise, I would say evenly you'd want to consider save percentage, and then a useful one to kind of use when things are close is the shot differential, because if two teams score and defend approximately the same, then the one that shoots more should, in theory, probably win. But goaltending, of course, you have to factor in as well. So anyways, so those are the data points, and we'll have a look at them now. So just a sec to pull up the spreadsheet, and then first we want to rank order by goal differential, descending, and we're starting with, which one should we start with? Let's go with Boston, Florida. We'll take a look at that series first. So well, if you've followed the season, as I'm sure most of you would have, Boston, made records for a bunch of different things. Most wins in a season. I'm sure it must be most points as well. And the gap is just so huge in terms of the stats of the season. That, I mean, it's supposed to be the Bruins, hands down. So to start with goal differential, theirs was 127, basically double the next best. Unreal. And then you contrast that with Florida, who just squeaked into the playoffs. First versus 16th. Differential of 16 for Florida versus 127 for Boston. So very clearly, Boston's the favorite. That's that. Not too surprising there. Next, we'll take a look at shot differential. This is where things should be closer. Florida, in fact, sits 4th and Boston's 7th. So 4th. So the shot differential for Florida was in their favor, 5.1 shots per game. And Boston was 3.2. So from that, it's very clear that Boston's supposed to be the better team by a large margin. But in a short series, a difference in shots, I mean, is Boston's performance sustainable for the playoffs as well? Like, it looks like yes, but they haven't had any bad points during the season. Is it going to be that way the whole way through, or are they going to have something at some point? Is it sustainable to be a record-making team in the regular season to go and then win the Stanley Cup. With how close it is in the NHL nowadays, yeah, they might win a cup, but they've got to have some sort of adversity at some point. You would think. Maybe. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm just trying to find something wrong with Boston. But in any case, in a short series, Florida leads by 2 shots per game. Not a huge gap, but it's something that kind of narrows the distance between the two teams. There's another thing I'm going to comment on, but I'll go through the other stats first. So next, we're going to have a look at goaltending. So again, Boston, I mean, their goaltending is going to be crazy ahead of everybody else. So .938 save percentage for Ullmark, 40 wins, 6 losses, and a tie. Swayman, 24-6-4, a 9.20. So I mean, both well above league average, which I believe should be around 9.14, 9.15, something like that. So way above average goaltending. Is it team-based? Is it player-based? Is it both? To what degree of each? It's hard to say, but goaltending should not, in theory, be an issue for Boston. So very good there. And then Florida, the goalies were Bobrovsky. He was 24, 20, and 3, 901 save percentage. Really poor, or at the very least below average by a noticeable degree. Lyon, 14, 9 and 4, 9, 4 and 2, 914 save percentage. So basically league average, but he's not typically a starter in the NHL, so you can take that with a grain of salt. Maybe he's on a roll. Maybe it's sustainable. Maybe he can steal a series, but it's kind of he wouldn't be as reliable in terms of expecting that kind of performance out of him. And then Spencer Knight, 9, 8, and 3, 901 save percentage. So same as Bobrovsky, not very good. So you're kind of hoping for Lyon or Lyon. I'm not sure if it's French or not. Actually, just out of interest, because I would like to know. No, it's probably Lyon. He's from Minnesota. And then, so, I mean, he's on a streak. Could he continue it? Could he steal a series? Maybe. Maybe you could say. But, Boston looks like a clear favorite here, even from a goaltending perspective. So, now, the other thing that I wanted to address was where is it? It's not listed anymore. There it is. Okay, so what I wanted to comment on is, remember that first, a lot of people had Boston as a bubble team before the season started. So just remember that. Have they overperformed the whole season? It's quite possible. Have they performed, as expected? You could argue that maybe too. Maybe they're on a roll and everything's clicking, and then it's just going to continue to go through, and it's just their season. It's hard to say, but you take a look at this. They were the top wild card spot, just a few points behind third place in the Atlantic. So they were kind of middle of the pack, but towards the bottom last season. The team hasn't changed all that much. So if it's the same team and they finish that low in the standings, what does that mean? And then where did they finish in the playoffs last season? So Boston lost in the first round. If it's essentially the same team, they lost in the first round to Carolina. I mean, everybody's very high on Boston, but it might be a lot closer than you think. And then so Florida's more or less the same team as well, and they finished top in the East last season, so 122 points. They are essentially mirror images from one season to the next, with very little change in players. For one, that tells you how close the league is, but second, shows you how much things can fluctuate from season to season. So in effect, you could argue that they're evenly matched teams. You could argue that. New coach in Florida, new coach in Boston. So whatever, however those have an influence on the performance, the teams, and in the playoffs, it's hard to say, but things definitely to factor in. It's not really all that big of a gap is what I would argue. So if you want to see a potential upset, this is kind of a huge upset. If you kind of disregard everything I've just said. I mean, it's got a really good shot at Florida upsetting Boston. Is it going to happen? I would say in all likelihood not. But it's way closer than I think most people are predicting. And a lot of people have Boston to win the Cup because of how good of a season they've had. The playoffs are different. It's a whole different season in the playoffs. Does regular season have a strong correlation with playoff success? Yes. Is it everything? No. I forget what the exact correlation is, but it's not, like, it's strong, but it's not certain that regular season performance is going to result in playoff performance. So I would caution everybody to pump the brakes on predicting Boston to win the series, let alone win the Stanley Cup. So nonetheless, what I should say is that I do believe Boston is going to win, but it could be extremely close. And I would not be at all surprised if Florida won the series. And what I should say, just as a little interesting, maybe, tidbit, I had Florida as one of my favorites before the season, and Boston as one of my, not, well, I was going to say middle of the pack, but I mean middle of the pack of the ones that I think are most, have the best shot at winning a cup. So not the lowest, not the best, but kind of, a middle choice for winning the cup. So, so based on my bets before the season, I have Florida winning. Based on the season and just considering everything all together, I do think Boston's going to win, but it could be extremely close. So, so as much as I do, I haven't chosen any upsets yet, and I do believe that upsets, obviously happen. I don't see it in this series. It could happen, like I said, but I'm not predicting that. So both my prediction outside of the brackets and then the data indicates in the brackets Boston to win. So so we'll choose Boston, but it's not a sure thing, that's for sure. So there's that, and then now we'll move on to Carolina and the Islanders. So we start again with goal differential. Where is it? There it is. So for goal differential, Carolina is 7th. Islanders are 12th. And so the exact amounts are 52 for the season for Carolina and 25 for Islanders for the season. So double, which means there's a bit of a gap. But it's not like the craziest gap like Boston, Florida, or something like that. So, so close, and the numbers are low enough where they're not dramatically different, but there is a bit of a gap there. And then going to shot differential. So Carolina leads, so they're first, and Islanders are 19th in the league. So first shot differential is 8.8 shots per game versus Islanders are negative 0.2 shots per game. So a difference in shots per game average of 9. So that's a lot. So Carolina leads in goal differential by double, and then they have a lead in shot average shots per game by 9. So that's a huge gap. So if the Islanders were hoping to narrow the gap with that, or have some sort of data point that is in their favor, it's definitely not goal differential and definitely not shots. So far, it looks like Carolina is a clear favorite. Not by a huge margin, but I mean, quite noticeable, and especially because of the shot differential. Moving over to goaltending, we want Carolina first. So Carolina split between 3 goalies for the season, which is, not a good thing, I would argue. It's not the worst thing in the world, because if you go back to my management strategy that I developed, I think it's a good idea. And so this is an example of it. The team did well, so it's not a bad thing, but the problem is who's going to play in terms of strategy for starters. So, and I should have said back with Boston, it's clearly Allmark. Probably give him 3 games. And if things don't go well, then maybe switch for Swayman for one of the four. And then for Florida, I mean, that's really a coin flip. I don't even know what to necessarily. I'd probably go with the hot goalie and Lyon, but maybe do 2 games for him, 2 games for Bobrovsky, but it's hard to say. But anyways, coming to here, this is where, I mean, it's tough to say. Personally, I like Anderson and his track record the most. I would go with him to start. He's had injury trouble, I mean, for many years. So maybe, I don't know the exact circumstance with his health and stuff. And Rant has a really good backup goaltender, so to go with him is not crazy either. Kochetkov, he'd be the third choice, in my opinion. But yeah, this is where it really is tough. So Anderson was 21, 11, and 1, 903 save percentage. Save percentage is bad. Winning percentage is good. Ranta 19, 3 and 3, even better winning percentage. 910 save percentage, so better in that regard too. Kochetkov 12, 7, 5, 909. So kind of a mix between the two. Not that good of a winning percentage, but a good save percentage, or compared to the to Anderson. So below average goaltending, it looks like, but evenly kind of spread between the goalies. So if something doesn't go right with one, you can kind of roll through almost all three. So personally, what I would recommend is Anderson for. I'd probably go with one only to start. If he plays well, win or lose, play him again. If he plays poorly, immediately switch to Ranta, is what I would argue. And then same story for Ranta. And then kind of just rotate very quickly between all your goalies and to try to get a series win. So that's what I would say, but Anderson I think has a better track record, so I'd go with him to start. But altogether, goaltending, not that strong in Carolina. Not bad, but not strong either, I would argue. So moving over to the Islanders. Sorokin, 31, 22, and 7, 924 save percentage, outstanding for such a, middle of the pack team. And then Varlamov, 11, 9, and 2, 913. So he's basically at league average save percentage on a very mediocre team. And Sorokin's above average on the same team. So like I was saying, Carolina leads with goal differential and has a huge gap in shots per game. But like I've said previously, a big equalizer is goaltending. A goalie can steal a series. And I mean, if anybody can do it, Sorokin, Varlamov even, they could do it. So in terms of strategy, what I'd recommend to the Islanders is I'd go 3 games with Sorokin regardless of performance or outcome. Only switch to Varlamov in 4 if you've lost all 3 or Sorokin hasn't played well and have lost 2 of them probably. But I'd ride Sorokin. I'm most confident in him, and I think in previous seasons when they gave Varlamov games, I didn't like the idea. I thought Sorokin should have gotten most or all of the starts. Played very well in the KHL. I think he won at least one championship there, and otherwise played extremely well in the KHL, and that's a very competitive league too. So, in my opinion, I really, really hope that they play Sorokin a lot. It's different this year because they have a new coach. Is it Barry Trotz? Trotz is his last name, but I'm gapping on his first name. Anyways, change of coach, and I think he liked kind of sharing the load between the goalies previously, and I'm hoping this coach is different and leans on Sorokin, which in terms of the split of the games for the season, it looks like it, but once things go into the playoffs, who's to say exactly what he's going to do. But so that's what I would say with their strategy, and this is one of those things that could really change the series. Now, the other thing I want to caution people to remember is that Carolina doesn't have two of their one guy didn't play much at all this season, but two of their highest scoring players, Svechnikov and Pacioretty, who didn't play much but would have been a big contributor based on his track record. So they lose a lot of goal scoring. You take a look at what they have left, and it's decent, but and they've improved their defense with some of their additions. But if it comes down to a defensive series, Islanders are made for it, and Carolina, I would argue, is not. They're an offensive team. So when it comes to strategy, if they have to compete defensively, it's not. Carolina's not in that great of a position to do that. So that's another thing to kind of factor in. Islanders don't have any major injuries. Barzal's supposed to come back for the first game, where Carolina has injuries that are important. So I'd say it's a lot closer than the regular season stats, the goal differential and shot differential indicate, and then the equalizer of goaltending. The other thing to remember is that although the Islanders missed the playoffs last season, they were close, and that I think both of the previous two seasons they got to the conference final, beating Boston one of those seasons, if I'm not mistaken, and otherwise, and the team hasn't really changed. And actually, if anything, they've gotten better because they've added Horvat. So they've got more scoring capability than they've had previously. And I don't think the issue maybe is, I don't know if the coaching, if it was Trotz still, so if they had Trotz and or their season was better, I would have strongly believed that the Islanders would win. But here it's kind of, I think it's more of a coin toss. I think a lot of people have Carolina to win it very easily, or at least, with enough of a gap that they should clearly win. But I think it's really a coin flip. And this, in the end, is actually where my first upset prediction is. And so I think because of past performance and with the addition of Horvat and good goaltending and Carolina's losses in terms of players, I'm going to have the Islanders upsetting the Hurricanes. Now, the data indicate that Carolina is going to win, so that's what we have in brackets here. But outside of the brackets is my prediction. I'm going to have the Islanders upset the Hurricanes. Now, in terms of number of games, I don't know. It could go very long, and it could actually be a very short series with Islanders winning, or Carolina winning for that matter. But um, I'm predicting the Islanders. I think it's the through 6 series. It's my first one where I'm predicting an upset. So, uh, although I mentioned that some upsets could take place in the other series, so Colorado could get upset. Boston could get upset, but here I'm actually predicting an upset with the Islanders to beat the Hurricanes. So that's my prediction for the series. Now, having a look at the odds makers. So Boston is in terms of the odds makers, it's their clear favorite 4-1. In terms of value, I would definitely not put money on Boston at 4-1 because like I said previously, I target somewhere around 9 or 10-1 for one of my favorite teams to put money on them. So I don't like those odds. I wouldn't put money on them, but I mean, if you think that they're going to win the cup and it's going to be just a complete walk through all the competition, then hey, maybe you can do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's good odds. Next best is Carolina 10-1. I wouldn't say they're bad odds, but personally, if I would bet on Carolina, I'd want them maybe at like 16-1, 20, 21-1, something like that. To be honest, I would be more towards 20 or 21-1. I don't like 10-1 because I wouldn't have them as one of my favorites before the season, now, at any point, to be honest. I think there's better teams ahead of them. So 10-1 I don't like, but if you have them as one of your favorites, then you can consider it. Because like I said, 9 or 10-1 is for a favorite, or at least the target that I make. And so if you have them as a favorite, then you could consider it. Next up is Florida at 34-1. I think those are extremely good odds because, like I said, they were one of my favorites before the season. And 34-1 is outstanding, even if they're one of your middle, like if you consider them kind of middle of the pack potential to win the cup, it's very, very good value you're getting there. So if you have them as a middle of the pack or long shot, but you do think they can win a cup, very good odds. I would put money down on Florida. I think those are dramatically better than the odds that I put money on them for. So yeah, definitely worth consideration. And likewise, Islanders, I'd say the same sort of thing. A lot of people don't like the Islanders, but like I said, they have a good track record prior to last season. So I would argue that you could and probably should have them as a long shot favorite, long shot, having long shot potential, and at 34-1. I mean, if they've gotten to the conference finals in two of previous seasons with essentially the same team, at 34-1, I'd say those are really good odds. So 2 steals in terms of betting odds, I would argue, but that's just my opinion. If you have the same sort of logic as me, then maybe consider putting money as them. Otherwise, I mean, there's a reason why the odds makers have them as this, because most people would disagree with me probably. So anyways, so those are the odds, and I think that's where we leave it. So again, just to recap, Boston, Florida, data indicate Boston winning. I'm also predicting Boston to win, but it could be close, and I could see an upset happening there. And then Carolina Islanders. I'm choosing the Islanders, but the data indicate that the Hurricanes are going to win. So that's where I'd say it's. But like I said, it's basically a coin toss, in my opinion. A lot of people would disagree, but that's my opinion on that. So that's it for today. If you like the stream, hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, turn on notifications. Otherwise, channel homepage has upcoming streams. I don't and won't have a schedule for the playoffs. Should typically be 3 p.m. Eastern. Today I had to delay it by an hour. But basically just look at the channel homepage for upcoming streams. It'll tell you when. Again, as I mentioned previously, the plan is to do series previews as well as series recaps after each round. And so basically it's going to follow however the playoffs progress. So kind of consider that and take a look at the channel homepage to figure out when I'm going to be doing my next streams. And I might do things in between. In this case, because the first round is going to be longer than, in terms of number of days, than moving into the next rounds, probably, at least in all likelihood. I'll probably have a random topic stream coming up some point in the middle of the round. The topic I won't announce yet, and I don't think I'll tell you the day yet because I'm not entirely certain, but basically it should be at some point in the middle of the round probably. So anyways, that's the plan. And then as always, any comments, leave them in the comments. Suggestions, same thing. And that's it. So hope you guys enjoy the start of the playoffs, start of the first round. First day, it's going to be super exciting and some good match. Actually, on that note, I didn't mention what are the matchups for today. So Islanders, Hurricanes, Panthers, Bruins, so the two that I did today. And then Wilds, Stars, Kings, Oilers. And just in case you're going to bet on things, don't hold me at fault if you get them wrong, but I'll give you my predictions for game one of each series. So Islanders win, Bruins win, Stars win, Oilers win. So those are my predictions for game number one. Now, you won't get those for all the rest of the games because while I'm doing tomorrow's streams, I'll probably do those for the game ones tomorrow as well. But that's all you're going to get. The rest of the predictions you're going to have to do on your own. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoy the games. I know I will. And super pumped for the playoffs. Talk to you guys tomorrow.